The rain hammered against the cracked pavement like bullets, each drop exploding into 1,000 smaller fragments that soaked through Marcus Chun's worn sneakers. He pulled his threadbare jacket tighter around his shoulders, ducking his head against the wind that seemed determined to strip away what little warmth he had left. The neon signs of downtown Chicago blurred through the downpour, casting sickly colors across the empty streets at 3 in the morning. Marcus had been walking for hours, unable to sleep in the homeless shelter's overcrowded bunks where the sound of 40 men breathing, snoring, and shifting created a symphony of desperation. The streets offered a different kind of peace, dangerous, cold, but somehow more honest than the charity that came with pitying looks and judgmental whispers. Was cutting through the financial district when something caught his eye. There, wedged between a storm drain and the marble steps of Blackstone Tower, lay a leather wallet. Marcus paused, water dripping from his black hair into his eyes. In his world, finding money meant the difference between eating and going hungry for another day. But something about the wallet's placement seemed wrong, too convenient, too visible. His fingers trembled as he picked it up, not from cold, but from the weight of decision. The leather was expensive, smooth and supple despite the rain. The kind of wallet that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month back when he had a job, back when he had a life that made sense. He could slip it into his jacket and disappear into the maze of alleyways that had become his neighborhood. No one would know. No one would care. The owner was probably some rich businessman who would simply cancel his cards and order new ones, writing off the cash as a minor inconvenience. But as Marcus turned the wallet over in his hands, he felt the familiar ache in his chest, the reminder of who he used to be, who his mother had raised him to be. Even rock bottom had its principles, and some lines once crossed could never be uncrossed. He opened the wallet carefully, expecting to find the usual collection of credit cards and cash. Instead, he found something that made his breath catch. In his throat, the wallet contained nearly $2,000 in crisp hundreds, more money than Marcus had seen in months. But it was the photograph tucked behind the bills that stopped him cold. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. She was holding a stuffed elephant, her small arms wrapped around it protectively. On the back of the photo, someone had written in careful handwriting, "Emma, my heart, my hope." Marcus stared at the photo, rainwater dripping onto the protective plastic covering. There was something about the girl's expression that reminded him of his younger sister, the same fearless joy that children possessed before the world taught them to be afraid. Before life took everything away. The next morning found Marcus standing outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Blackstone Enterprises, the wallet heavy in his jacket pocket. He had spent the night researching the address on the driver's license, discovering that the wallet belonged to David Blackstone himself, the billionaire CEO, whose face graced magazine covers and whose company dominated the Chicago skyline. The piquant contrast between Marcus's appearance and the polished marble lobby was stark. His clothes, while clean, bore the unmistakable marks of someone living on society's margins. The security guard at the front desk looked him up and down with practiced disdain. "Can I help you?" The guard's tone suggested that help was the last thing he intended to offer. Marcus pulled out the wallet, watching the guard's expression shift from suspicion to surprise. "I found this last night. I'd like to return it to Mr. Blackstone." "The fee?" Guard examined the wallet carefully, his suspicion returning. "How do I know you didn't steal this?" "Because I'm here returning it instead of using the credit cards," Marcus replied quietly. "Look, I just want to do the right thing." After what felt like an eternity of phone calls and verification procedures, Marcus found himself in an elevator climbing toward the 42nd floor. The city spread out below him through the glass walls, a maze of steel and concrete that looked different from this height. From up here, the streets where he slept seemed like another world entirely. The elevator opened into a reception area. that screamed wealth and power. Everything was white marble and dark wood, designed to intimidate and impress. The receptionist, a perfectly coiffed woman in her 30s, looked at Marcus with barely concealed distaste. "Mr. Blackstone will see you now," she said, her voice as cold as the marble floors. The office beyond was a monument to success. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Chicago, while expensive art adorned the walls. Behind a massive mahogany desk sat David Blackstone himself, a man in his early 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of Marcus's appearance. "Mr. Chen, I presume?" Blackstone's voice was deep, controlled, the voice of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Marcus nodded, pulling out the wallet. "I found this last night near your building. I wanted to return it." Blackstone took the wallet, his expression unreadable. He opened it, checking the contents with the methodical precision of someone who trusted nothing to chance. When he reached the photograph, his entire demeanor changed. The corporate mask slipped, revealing something raw and vulnerable underneath. His hands trembled as he held the photo, and for a moment, Marcus saw not the powerful CEO but a broken father. The silence stretched between them, filled with an emotion so intense it seemed to change the very air in the room. "Where did you find this?" Blackstone's voice was barely above a whisper. "On the steps outside your building, around 3 a.m. Blackstone's eyes snapped up to meet Marcus's, and there was something desperate in them now. "You didn't see anyone else? Anyone who might have dropped it?" Marcus shook his head, confused by the intensity of the reaction. "No, sir. Just the wallet." Blackstone stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His reflection in the glass looked haunted. "This photograph. It's of my daughter, Emma. She's been missing for 2 years." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The careful handwriting on the back of the photo suddenly made terrible sense. Missing? Kidnapped. The word came out like a curse. Taken. From our home while I was at a conference in Tokyo. The police, the FBI, private investigators, everyone's looked for her. There have been no credible leads, no ransom demands, nothing. Until now. Blackstone turned back to Marcus, his eyes blazing with renewed hope. "This wallet, I haven't carried this photo in months. I moved it to my safe at home because it was too painful to look at every day. Someone had to have been in my house, had to have taken it from the safe." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with his wet clothes. "You think whoever took your daughter put your wallet where I'd find it?" "I think," Blackstone said slowly, "that someone wants to send me a message, and they chose you to deliver it. What do you think will happen next? Share your predictions in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories." The revelation that Marcus might be an unwitting pawn in a larger game sent a shock of fear through him. He had thought he was doing a simple good deed, but now he found himself pulled into something far more dangerous than he could have imagined. Blackstone was already reaching for his phone. "I need to call Detective Morrison. She's been handling Emma's case." "Wait," Marcus said, his mind racing. "If someone wanted me to find that wallet, they might be watching to see what happens next. Calling the police right now might spook them." Blackstone paused, his finger hovering over the phone. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we think this through. Why would someone break into your house, steal your wallet, and then leave it where a homeless guy would find it? What's the point of that message?" Blackstone set down his phone, his business mind engaging with the puzzle. "You're right. There has to be more to it." He studied Marcus with new interest. "You're not what I expected." Marcus almost smiled. "You mean I'm not the typical homeless junkie you assumed I was?" "Exactly that. What's your story, Mr. Chen? How does someone who clearly has intelligence and education end up on the streets?" The question was like a knife to an old wound, but Marcus found himself answering. "I was a software engineer at a startup. We were developing a new security platform when my business partner embezzled our funding and disappeared. The investors sued everyone, including me. I lost everything: my house, my car, my savings. My fiancé left. My family disowned me because they thought I was complicit. I've been on the streets for 8 months now. Blackstone's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. The point is, Marcus continued, I know what it's like to have your life torn apart by someone else's actions. Maybe that's why they chose me. Maybe they knew I'd understand. Understand what? What it feels like to lose everything that matters. The intercom buzzed, interrupting their conversation. Blackstone's assistant's voice filled the room. Mr. Blackstone, there's a package for you at the front desk. The courier says it's urgent. Blackstone and Marcus exchanged glances. Send it up, Blackstone said. 10 minutes later, they were staring at a plain manila envelope with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, a recent picture of Emma, older now, sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable room. She was holding the same stuffed elephant from the wallet photo, but her eyes looked different now, older, sadder. Attached to the photo was a note written in the same careful handwriting: she's safe. She's loved, but she misses her daddy. If you want to see her again, you'll need to prove you deserve her. The man who returned your wallet is the key. Trust him, and he'll lead you to me. Hurt him, and you'll never see Emma again. Marcus felt his hands shake as he read the note. They're watching us. They know I returned the wallet. Blackstone's face had gone pale. Emma looks ... She looks healthy. Well cared for. That's something, Marcus said, though his voice was tight with tension. But this person, whoever they are, they've just made me a target. Why would they do that? Because they want something from me, and they think you're the way to get it. Blackstone ran his hands through his silver hair. The question is, what do they want? Marcus studied the photograph again. Something about the background nagged at him. Mr. Blackstone, can I use your computer? Call me David, and yes, of course. Marcus sat at the computer, his fingers flying over the keyboard with practiced ease. He enhanced the photograph, adjusting contrast and brightness, focusing on the background details. What are you looking for? David asked. Anything that might tell us where this photo was taken. Marcus zoomed in on a window visible in the background. There, see that building reflection? That's the merchandise mart. This photo was taken somewhere with a clear view of the river. David leaned closer. There are dozens of buildings with that view, but not many with that specific angle. Marcus manipulated the image further. And look at this. There's a partial sign visible in the reflection. Water ... something. I can't make out the rest. David's intercom buzzed again. Mr. Blackstone, Detective Morrison is here to see you. She says it's about Emma. David and Marcus looked at each other. We didn't call her, David said. Then how does she know about this? Marcus asked. Send her up, David instructed, his voice grim. Detective Sarah Morrison was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen too much of humanity's dark side. She entered the office like she owned it, her gaze immediately fixing on Marcus. Mr. Blackstone, I understand you've had some developments in Emma's case. How did you? Your building security called it in when they saw the wallet return on the surveillance footage. They thought it might be connected. She turned to Marcus. You're the one who found it? Marcus nodded, suddenly aware that he was now part of an official investigation. Yes, ma'am. Where exactly did you find it? As Marcus recounted the story, Detective Morrison took notes, her expression growing increasingly concerned. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Chen, I need to ask you some questions. Have you ever seen this little girl before? She showed him Emma's original missing person photo. No, never. Do you have any connection to the Blackstone family? None. I'd never heard of them before yesterday. Have you noticed anyone following you or watching you recently? Marcus thought about it. On the streets, you develop a sense for when someone's paying attention to you. But I can't say I've noticed anything specific. Why, Detective Morrison? Exchanged a look with David. Because this has all the hallmarks of a very sophisticated operation. Whoever took Emma has been planning this for a long time, and now they've involved you. Involved me how? Think about it, she said. They could have left the wallet anywhere, could have sent it directly to Mr. Blackstone, but they chose to use you as the delivery method. That suggests they've been watching you, studying you. The question is why? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Marcus felt exposed, vulnerable in a way he hadn't since his first night on the streets. Detective, David said, we received another package after Mr. Chen's visit. He showed her the photograph and note. Detective Morrison's expression darkened as she read. This changes everything. Mr. Chen, I'm going to need to put you in protective custody. What? Marcus stood up, alarm bells ringing in his head. I can't. Won't be locked up. It's for your own safety. No. Marcus backed toward the door. I've been in the system before. I know how this works. You put me in a cell, and I disappear into the bureaucracy. Meanwhile, this person, whoever they are, moves on to Plan B, and Emma never comes home. Mr. Chen, you don't understand the danger. I understand it perfectly. Marcus looked between David and the detective. But hiding isn't going to solve this. The note says I'm the key. Maybe I am. Maybe the only way to get Emma back is to play this out. David stepped forward. It's too dangerous. I won't risk your life for my daughter. With respect, Mr. Blackstone, David, it's not your choice. Someone made me part of this, and running away isn't going to change that. But maybe, just maybe, we can use that to our advantage. Detective Morrison studied him carefully. What do you have in mind? Marcus looked out the window at the city sprawling below, thinking of all the ways a person could hide in plain sight among the millions of residents. I go back to the streets. I act normal, but I watch. I listen. And I trust that whoever's doing this will make contact again. That's a terrible plan, Detective Morrison said. You have a better one? She was quiet for a moment. Actually, I might. Detective Morrison's plan was both simple and terrifying. Use Marcus as bait while maintaining surveillance from a distance. She had already arranged for undercover officers to blend into the homeless population, creating a network of watchers who could monitor Marcus without being obvious about it. The key is to make everything look normal, she explained as they sat in a diner across from the shelter where Marcus usually stayed. You go about your routine, but you stay alert. If someone approaches you, if anything seems off, you signal us. Marcus touched the small communication device hidden in the lining of his jacket. And if something goes wrong, then you run, and we converge on your location. Detective Morrison's expression was serious. I won't lie to you, Mr. Chen. This is dangerous. But it's also our best shot at finding Emma. David had insisted on being part of the operation, though Detective Morrison had argued against it. She's my daughter, he had said with quiet intensity. I'm not sitting in some office while other people risk their lives to find her. Now David sat across from Marcus, looking absurdly out of place in the diner's worn booth. He had traded his expensive suit for jeans and a plain shirt, but he still looked like what he was, a wealthy man playing dress-up. You need to stay away from me, Marcus told him. If they're watching, they'll know you don't belong in my world. I'll maintain distance, David promised, but I need to be nearby. I need to do something. Marcus understood the feeling. After 8 months of powerlessness, of being at the mercy of forces beyond his control, being able to take action, even dangerous action, felt like reclaiming a piece of himself. He returned to the streets as evening fell, sliding back into the rhythm of survival that had become second nature. The homeless shelter was full, as usual, so he found a spot in the alley behind a 24-hour laundromat where the warm air from the dryer vents provided some comfort against the October chill. For 3 days, nothing happened. Marcus went through his normal routine, checking the job placement centers, visiting the library for internet access, scrounging for meals at soup kitchens. He was beginning to think that whoever was behind Emma's kidnapping had changed their mind about involving him. Then, on the 4th night, he met Grace. She appeared at the laundromat alley like a ghost, a thin woman in her 30s with prematurely gray hair and eyes that held too much knowledge. She moved with the careful economy of someone who had learned to make every action count. "You're new around here," she said, settling down against the brick wall a few feet from Marcus. "Not that new, 8 months. Ah." She nodded as if this explained something. "Still finding your feet then?" "I'm Grace, Marcus." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the hum of the machines inside the laundromat. Grace had a way of being present without being intrusive, a quality that Marcus recognized as rare among the homeless population, where personal space was a luxury few could afford. "You have the look," Grace said eventually. "What look?" "The look of someone who lost everything all at once. Most of us slide down gradual, like job loss, then apartment, then family. But you had a life, and then one day you didn't." Marcus was surprised by her perceptiveness. "What gave it away?" "The way you carry yourself. Still got some pride left, some fight. Give it another year, and that'll be gone too." She pulled a thermos from her bag and offered it to him. "Coffee?" The coffee was surprisingly good, hot and strong. "Thank you, you're welcome. Now tell me about the little girl." Marcus nearly choked on the coffee. "What?" Grace's expression hadn't changed, but there was something different in her eyes now. "The little girl whose picture you've been carrying around, the one someone wants you to find." Marcus set down the thermos very carefully. His hand moved toward the communication device, but Grace shook her head. "Don't. Your cop friends can't help with this part." "Who are you?" "Someone who's been watching you watch for me." Grace pulled out a photograph, a different picture of Emma, this one showing her in what looked like a classroom setting. "She's a bright girl. I love to read. Asks a lot of questions about her father." Marcus's heart was pounding. "You know where she is?" "I know a lot of things." Grace studied him carefully. "The question is, are you ready to hear them? Is she safe?" "She's safe. She's loved. But she's also been gone from her father for 2 years, and that leaves marks that time alone won't heal." "Why are you telling me this? What do you want?" Grace was quiet for a long moment. "What I want is for a good man to get his daughter back. What I need is for you to understand that everything you think you know about Emma's disappearance is wrong." "Wrong how?" "Emma wasn't kidnapped by strangers, Marcus. She was taken by someone who loves her, someone who believes they were protecting her from something worse." Marcus felt the world shift around him. "Protecting her from what?" Grace stood up, shouldering her bag. "That's what you need to find out. But be careful who you trust. David Blackstone isn't the man you think he is, and the truth about why Emma was taken might be more than you can handle." "Wait," Marcus scrambled to his feet. "You can't just tell me that and leave." "I can, and I will, but I'll be in touch." Grace paused at the mouth of the alley. "Marcus, the reason you were chosen for this isn't random. There's a connection between you and Emma that goes deeper than you realize. When you figure out what it is, you'll understand everything." And then she was gone, disappearing into the maze of downtown streets like she had never been there at all. Marcus stood alone in the alley, his mind reeling. Grace's words echoed in his head. "David Blackstone isn't the man you think he is." What did that mean? And what connection could he possibly have to a kidnapped girl he'd never met? He pulled out the communication device, then hesitated. Detective Morrison had said to report any contact, but something about Grace's manner suggested that involving the police at this stage would be a mistake. Instead, He pocketed the device and began walking. He needed to think, and he needed information. The library would be closed at this hour, but there were internet cafes that stayed open all night. If David Blackstone wasn't who he seemed to be, Marcus was going to find out the truth. The tension is building. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which character you're rooting for. Your support helps me create more incredible stories like this one. The Internet Cafe was a dingy place that catered to night owls and insomniacs, its fluorescent lights buzzing over rows of outdated computers. Marcus paid for 2 hours with the last of his pocket change and settled in at a terminal in the back. He started with basic searches on David Blackstone, but the results were frustratingly uniform glowing profiles in business magazines, coverage of Blackstone Enterprises' success, charitable donations, and awards. The public David Blackstone was a model citizen, a devoted father, and a pillar of the community. But Grace's words nagged at him. David Blackstone isn't the man you think he is. Marcus dug deeper, looking for cracks in the perfect facade. Found the first anomaly buried in a small business journal from 3 years ago. The article mentioned a messy divorce between David and his ex-wife, Catherine Blackstone, but provided no details. Court records were sealed, which was unusual for a simple divorce proceeding. Marcus switched tactics, searching for information about Catherine Blackstone. Here, the trail became more interesting. Catherine had been a social worker before her marriage, specializing in child welfare cases. After the divorce, she had moved to Seattle and taken a job with a nonprofit organization that helped children escape abusive situations. The timing was significant. Emma had disappeared 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Marcus found a cached copy of an old blog post written by someone named Concerned Parent 2019. The post, written in the emotional language of someone at their breaking point, described the custody battle where a wealthy father had used his influence to gain custody of his daughter despite serious concerns about his fitness as a parent. The post had been deleted, but the internet never forgot. A chill ran down Marcus's spine. Could Emma's disappearance have been an attempt by her mother to protect her from something? But if that were the case, why involve him? And why the elaborate charade with the wallet? Marcus's research was interrupted by the feeling of being watched. He glanced around the cafe, noting the other patrons, a couple of college students working on papers, an elderly man reading news websites, a woman in her 40s typing furiously on what looked like a personal letter. Nothing seemed out of place. But Marcus had learned to trust his instincts. He cleared his browser history, logged out, and prepared to leave. As he stood up, the woman at the far terminal caught his eye. She looked familiar, though he couldn't place where he might have seen her. Marcus left the cafe and walked several blocks before doubling back through an alley to see if anyone was following him. The street was empty except for the occasional late-night pedestrian and a few cars passing by. He was being paranoid, he told himself. The stress of the situation was making him see threats where none existed. But as he made his way back toward the shelter, Marcus noticed the same woman from the Internet Cafe walking on the opposite side of the street, maintaining a steady distance behind him. When he stopped to tie his shoe, she paused to look in a shop window. When he resumed walking, she did too. Marcus's pulse quickened. He turned down a side street, then quickly ducked into the recessed doorway of a closed shop. Sure enough, the woman rounded the corner a moment later, looking confused when she realized he was no longer ahead of her. Looking for someone? Marcus stepped out of the shadows. The woman spun around, her hand moving instinctively toward her jacket. "Mr. Chen, I'm Agent Sarah Mitchell, FBI." She showed him a badge. "I need to talk to you." "FBI? I thought Detective Morrison was handling this case." "She is, but Emma's kidnapping has federal implications. Can we talk somewhere private?" Marcus studied her carefully. The badge looked legitimate, but after Grace's warnings about trusting people, He was hesitant to go anywhere with someone he didn't know. "Here's fine," he said. Agent Mitchell looked around at the empty street. "Mr. Chen, I know you've been researching David Blackstone tonight. I also know that someone made contact with you earlier this evening." Marcus's blood ran cold. If the FBI had been watching him, they would have seen Grace. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The woman in the alley behind the laundromat. Thin, gray hair, around 35 years old. We have her on surveillance footage, but she disappeared before we could intercept her. She was just another homeless person, looking for a warm spot." Agent Mitchell smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Chen, that woman is Catherine Blackstone, Emma's mother. She's wanted in connection with her daughter's disappearance." The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. Grace was Catherine Blackstone, Emma's mother. That meant she's been watching you for weeks, Agent Mitchell continued. "We believe she's been planning to use you as part of an elaborate scheme to extract money from her ex-husband." Marcus shook his head. "That doesn't make sense. If she wanted money, why involve me at all? Why not just contact David directly?" "Because Catherine Blackstone is mentally unstable, Mr. Chen. She's been diagnosed with paranoid delusions and bipolar disorder. In her mind, you're some kind of savior figure who's going to help her expose her ex-husband's supposed crimes." Marcus thought about his conversation with Grace Catherine. Had she seemed mentally unstable? Certainly she had been cryptic, but there had been a lucidity to her words, a careful intelligence that didn't match Agent Mitchell's description. "I need to see some identification," Marcus said. "Real identification, not just a badge." Agent Mitchell's expression hardened. "Mr. Chen, I'm trying to help you. Catherine Blackstone is dangerous. She's already murdered one person in connection with this case." "What person?" "A private investigator David hired to find Emma. Catherine killed him when he got too close to discovering her location." Marcus's mind raced. If Catherine was a murderer, if she was the one who had taken Emma, then everything he thought he knew was wrong. But something about Agent Mitchell's story didn't feel right. "I want to talk to Detective Morrison," Marcus said. "Detective Morrison has been pulled from the case. This is a federal matter now. Then I want to talk to David Blackstone." "Agent." Mitchell stepped closer, and Marcus noticed that her hand was resting on something bulky beneath her jacket. "Mr. Chen, I'm afraid I can't allow that. You're in danger, and I need to take you into protective custody. And if I refuse, then I'll have to arrest you as a material witness." Marcus looked at the woman, claiming to be an FBI agent, at her hand hovering near what he was increasingly certain was a weapon, and made a decision that would change everything. He ran. Marcus sprinted down the side street, his heart pounding, as he heard footsteps behind him. Agent Mitchell, if that was really her name, was pursuing him, and she was faster than he had expected. "Stop!" she shouted. "FBI!" But Marcus had spent 8 months learning the geography of Chicago's streets, learning which alleys led where, which buildings had unlocked doors, which routes offered the best escape options. He darted left into a narrow passage between 2 office buildings, then right into a loading dock area behind a restaurant. The sound of footsteps echoed off the brick walls, closer than Marcus would have liked. He pressed himself against a dumpster, trying to control his breathing as he listened. For his pursuer, the footsteps slowed, then stopped. Marcus heard the faint sound of a radio crackling. "Subject is in the wind," Agent Mitchell's voice said. "Request backup to coordinate search." Marcus closed his eyes. If Mitchell was really FBI, then he had just made himself a fugitive. But if she wasn't, then he might have just saved his own life. He waited until the footsteps receded, then carefully made his way out of the loading dock. He needed to get to David Blackstone, needed to warn him about what was happening. But going to Blackstone Tower would be suicide if Mitchell was legitimate. The building would be crawling with federal agents by now. Marcus pulled out his phone, then remembered that it was probably being monitored. Instead, he made his way to an all-night diner 6 blocks away, one that still had a payphone in the back. He dialed the number for Blackstone Enterprises, knowing that David's private line would forward to his personal phone after hours. "David, it's Marcus. Don't talk, just listen. I think we're in trouble." "Marcus, where are you?" "The FBI said you ran from one of their agents." "The FBI? You've talked to them?" "Agent Mitchell called me 20 minutes ago. She said Catherine made contact with you and that you fled the scene when she tried to take you into protective custody." Marcus felt a chill. "David, the woman I met tonight, Grace, she told me things about Emma's disappearance that don't match what we've been told. She said Emma wasn't kidnapped by strangers, that she was taken by someone trying to protect her." There was silence on the other end of the line. "David?" "Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Catherine is not well. She's been diagnosed with severe mental illness, and she's been obsessed with the idea that I'm somehow dangerous to Emma. She's the one who took Emma, and she's been playing an elaborate game ever since." "But what about the wallet? How did she get into your safe?" Another pause. "The wallet was never in my safe, Marcus. I carry that photo with me everywhere. I must have dropped the wallet when I was leaving the building that night. Catherine found it, saw an opportunity, and used you to get it back to me as part of her psychological manipulation." Marcus's head was spinning. David's explanation made sense, but something about it felt rehearsed, too convenient. "I need to see you," Marcus said, "face to face." "That's not possible right now. The FBI has protocols. Then I'm going to Detective Morrison." "Marcus, Detective Morrison is dead." The words hit Marcus like a sledgehammer. "What?" "She was found in her apartment 2 hours ago. Single gunshot to the head. The FBI believes Catherine killed her because Morrison was getting too close to the truth." Marcus slumped against the phone booth, his mind reeling. Detective Morrison dead? Catherine a murderer? Everything was spinning out of control. "Marcus, are you there?" "I'm here. I need you to turn yourself into Agent Mitchell. It's the only way to stay safe." "David, I don't think Agent Mitchell is who she says she is." "What do you mean?" "Something about her didn't feel right. And if the FBI has been watching me, how did Catherine get close enough to make contact?" David was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, I think the stress of this situation is getting to you. You need to trust the authorities." But Marcus was already thinking about Grace's Catherine's words. "David Blackstone isn't the man you think he is. What if she was right? What if everything David had told him was a lie?" "I have to go," Marcus said. "Marcus, wait." But Marcus had already hung up the phone. He stood in the diner, surrounded by the smell of coffee and grease, trying to sort through the conflicting information. Someone was lying to him, but who and why? He thought about the photograph of Emma that Catherine had shown him, the one of her in what looked like a classroom. The girl in that photo hadn't looked like a kidnapping victim. She looked like a student. Marcus made a decision. He was going to find Catherine Blackstone and hear her side of the story. But first, he needed to disappear completely from the radar of whoever was hunting him. He left the diner and walked to the Greyhound station, where he used the last of his money to buy a ticket to Milwaukee. But instead of boarding the bus, he slipped out the back of the station and made his way to the industrial district on the south side of the city. There, in a maze of abandoned warehouses and forgotten streets, Marcus began to plan his next move. He had no money, no resources, and no one he could trust. But he had something else, the knowledge that a little girl's life might depend on him. Uncovering the truth. As dawn broke over Chicago, Marcus Chen disappeared into the urban wasteland, determined to solve a mystery that seemed to grow more complicated with each passing hour. For 2 days, Marcus lived like a ghost in the abandoned warehouse district, scavenging for food and avoiding the police patrols that had increased noticeably in the area. He spent his time thinking, analyzing every detail of his interactions with David. Detective Morrison, Agent Mitchell, and Catherine. The breakthrough came when he remembered something Catherine had said. There's a connection between you and Emma that goes deeper than you realize. Marcus had dismissed it as the cryptic rambling of someone playing psychological games, but now he wondered if she had meant something specific. He made his way to the main library during the afternoon shift change, when the building was most crowded and he could blend in. Using a computer terminal, Marcus began researching his own past in ways he had never considered. He searched for information about his birth, his adoption records, and his biological parents. What he found made his blood run cold. Marcus Chen was born Michael Thompson in Seattle 26 years ago. His birth mother was Catherine Blackstone. Then Catherine Thompson, an 18-year-old girl who had given him up for adoption when she couldn't care for him. His birth father was listed as unknown. Marcus stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process the information. Catherine Blackstone was his biological mother. Emma was his half-sister. The pieces began falling into place with terrifying clarity. Catherine hadn't chosen him randomly to return the wallet. She had been watching him, studying him, waiting for the right moment to draw him into Emma's story. She knew who he was, even if he didn't. But why hadn't she simply told him the truth? From the beginning? Marcus printed out the adoption records and left the library, his mind racing. He needed to find Catherine, needed to understand what she was really trying to accomplish. But first, he had to stay alive long enough to learn the truth. As evening fell, Marcus made his way back to the alley behind the laundromat, where he had first met Catherine. She wasn't there, but someone else was, a homeless man named Eddie, who had been living on the streets for 15 years. "Are you looking for Grace?" Eddie asked without preamble. "You know her?" "Know her? Hell, I've been passing messages to her for the last month. She said you'd come back here eventually." Eddie reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. "She said to give you this when you figured out who you really are." Marcus took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in Catherine's careful handwriting. "Michael, by the time you read this, you'll know that I'm your mother. And Emma is your sister. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the truth from the beginning, but I needed you to discover it yourself. I needed you to understand that the choices I made weren't born of madness, but of love. David Blackstone is not Emma's father, Michael. You are both my children, but you have different fathers. I gave you up for adoption because I was young and scared and thought I couldn't provide for you. It's the greatest regret of my life. When I met David 5 years later, I thought I had found someone who could help me build the family I had always dreamed of. But David is not the man he pretends to be. He's controlling, manipulative, and dangerous. When Emma started showing signs of fear around him, I knew I had to act. I didn't kidnap Emma, Michael. I rescued her. The custody battle was rigged from the start. David used his money and influence to paint me as an unfit mother. But Emma was never safe with him. Detective Morrison was the only person in law enforcement who believed me. She was investigating David's business practices and had uncovered evidence of his involvement in human trafficking through his overseas operations. She was murdered because she got too close to the truth. The woman claiming to be Agent Mitchell is actually Helen Morrison, the detective's sister. She's been working with David to cover up his crimes and eliminate anyone who threatens his empire. Emma is safe. She's in a place where David can never find her, with people who love her and will protect her. But I need your help to expose David and make sure Emma can live freely. Meet me tomorrow night at the address on the back of this letter. Come alone and trust no one else. Our daughter's life depends on it. Your mother, Catherine." Marcus read the letter 3 times, his world reshaping itself with each reading. Emma was his daughter? No, that couldn't be right. But as he read more carefully, he realized Catherine had written "our daughter," not "your daughter." She meant Emma was their daughter in the sense that they were both protecting her. The address on the back of the letter was for a warehouse in the same district where Marcus had been hiding. As he made his way there the next evening, he tried to prepare himself for whatever revelations awaited him. The warehouse was dark except for a single light burning in a second-floor window. Marcus climbed the external fire escape, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. Catherine was waiting for him in what had once been an office space. She looked different now, stronger, more focused, no longer playing the role of the broken homeless woman. "Hello, Michael," she said. "Is it true? All of it?" "All of it." Catherine gestured for him to sit on a folding chair across from her. "I've been watching you for months, learning about the man you became. I'm proud of you. Where's Emma?" "Safe. I'll take you to her, but first, there's someone you need to meet." Catherine led him to another room where a man in his 50s sat at a computer, workstation surrounded by surveillance equipment. He looked up as they entered, and Marcus saw the resemblance immediately. "Michael, this is Detective James Morrison, Sarah's brother. He's been helping me gather evidence against David." Detective Morrison stood and extended his hand. "I'm sorry about the deception, but we needed to be sure we could trust you. Your sister is very much alive and in hiding. We faked her death to make David think his problems were solved. It also gave us the freedom to investigate without interference." Marcus sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the revelations. "So Agent Mitchell is Helen Morrison, James's other sister. She's been infiltrating David's organization for the past year. She's not FBI, she's an undercover journalist who specializes in exposing corruption." Catherine sat beside Marcus. "David Blackstone runs a human trafficking network through his international business operations. He uses his legitimate companies as fronts to move people across borders. Children, mostly. When I discovered what he was doing," Detective Morrison added, "I realized that Emma was never safe with him. Catherine came to me for help, and we've been working together ever since." Marcus looked at Catherine. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth from the beginning?" "Because I needed you to see David for who he really is. If I had simply told you he was evil, you might not have believed me. But by letting you experience his manipulation firsthand, by letting you see how he operates, I knew you'd understand." "And Emma?" Catherine smiled for the first time since Marcus had known her. "Would you like to meet your sister?" Catherine led Marcus through a hidden passage that connected the warehouse to an adjacent building that had been converted into a safe house. The transformation was remarkable. What appeared from the outside to be another abandoned structure was actually a comfortable living space complete with bedrooms, a kitchen, and a classroom. "Emma's been homeschooled by volunteer teachers," Catherine explained as they walked down a hallway lined with children's artwork. "She thinks she's part of a special program for gifted children whose parents travel a lot." They stopped outside. A door decorated with drawings of elephants. Catherine knocked gently. "Emma, there's someone I'd like you to meet." The door opened to reveal a girl of 9 with bright, intelligent eyes and dark hair that reminded Marcus of his own. She was taller than in the photographs, but she still clutched the same stuffed elephant. "Emma, this is Michael. He's your big brother." Emma studied Marcus with the serious expression of a child who had learned to be cautious around new people. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi, Emma." Marcus knelt down to her level, amazed by how much she looked like the sister he had never known he had. "I've been looking for you. Mama said you would come someday." Emma's voice was soft but confident. "She said you were lost, but you'd find your way back to us." Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. "I did find my way back." Emma stepped closer, studying his face with the intensity of someone memorizing features. "You look like the pictures Mama showed me. Do you really live on the streets?" "I did, yes. That must be scary sometimes." "It is, but not as scary as thinking I'd lost my family forever." Emma smiled then, a genuine expression of joy that transformed her entire face. "Do you want to see my room? I have lots of books." For the next hour, Marcus sat on Emma's bed while she showed him her collection of books, her drawings, and her school projects. She was bright beyond her years, articulate and curious about everything. She asked him about life on the streets, with the frank interest of a child who had learned that the world was more complicated than most adults wanted to admit. "Do you remember Daddy David?" Emma asked eventually. Marcus glanced at Catherine, who nodded encouragingly. "What do you remember about him?" "He was nice at first, but then he got angry a lot. He used to have meetings with scary men who talked about money and people like they were the same thing." Emma's expression grew serious. "Mama says he hurt people, but I don't know if I believe that. He never hurt me." "He didn't have to hurt you physically to be dangerous to you," Catherine said gently. "Sometimes the worst harm comes from being around people who do bad things to others." "I know," Emma said with a wisdom that broke Marcus's heart. "That's why we had to leave." As they talked, Marcus began to understand the careful balance Catherine had maintained, protecting Emma from the full truth while still helping her understand why they had to disappear. Emma knew she couldn't contact her father, but she believed it was because he was too busy with work to take care of her properly. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus sat with Catherine in the safe house's small kitchen. "She's remarkable," he said. "She's resilient. Children are more adaptable than we give them credit for." Catherine poured 2 cups of coffee from a thermos. "But she misses having a normal life. She asks about other children, about school, about when she can go outside without looking over her shoulder. What's the plan? How do we end this?" Catherine set down her coffee cup. "We expose David. James has been gathering evidence for months, documenting his business practices, his financial transactions, his connections to known traffickers. We have enough to bring him down, but we need him to incriminate himself. How? By making him think he's won. Helen is going to contact him tomorrow and tell him that she's captured you, and that you're willing to trade information about my location. For your freedom." Marcus felt a chill. "You want me to go back to him?" "I want you to be the bait that brings him into the open. James will have surveillance equipment on you, recording everything. When David reveals his true nature, when he admits to his crimes or threatens you, we'll have the evidence we need. And if something goes wrong..." Catherine reached across the table and took his hand. "Then Emma loses both her brother and her mother. That's why we have to be perfect." Marcus looked around the safe house, thinking about Emma asleep in her room, clutching her stuffed elephant and dreaming of a normal life. "When do we do this?" "Tomorrow night. Helen will arrange a meeting at David's private office. He'll think he's finally solving his problems, but instead, he'll be confessing to everything." Marcus nodded, accepting the weight of what he was about to do. "Catherine, why did you give me up for adoption?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. "I was 18, Michael. My parents had disowned me. The father wouldn't acknowledge you, and I was living in a shelter. I thought giving you to a family who could provide for you was the loving thing to do. Do you regret it?" "Every day. But I also know that you grew up to be a good man, someone who would risk everything to help a stranger return a wallet. Maybe that's the kind of person you became because of the family who raised you, not despite being separated from me." Marcus squeezed her hand. "We're going to get through this. All of us." "I hope so," Catherine said. "Because I'm not losing either of my children again." The meeting was set for the top floor of Blackstone Tower in David's private office where this entire nightmare had begun. Helen Morrison, playing her role as the corrupt agent, had arranged everything perfectly. David believed he was meeting with his captured enemy, ready to finally solve his problems once and for all. Marcus wore a wire concealed in his jacket lining, the same one Detective Morrison had given him days earlier. James Morrison monitored from a van outside the building while Helen maintained her cover as David's ally. "Remember," Helen had told Marcus before he went up, "let him talk. Let his ego drive the conversation. Men like David Blackstone can't resist explaining how clever they are." Marcus rode the elevator to the 42nd floor, his heart pounding with each passing floor. Everything depended on the next hour. If David revealed his involvement in human trafficking, if he admitted to ordering Detective Morrison's fake death, if he threatened Marcus or Emma, they would have enough evidence to destroy him. But if David suspected the trap, if he stayed in character as the grieving father, Marcus might not leave the building alive. The receptionist was gone at this late hour, and the office was dimly lit except for the glow coming from David's office. Marcus knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. David stood behind his desk, silhouetted against the Chicago skyline. He looked older than Marcus remembered, more worn down by the stress of the past few days. "Marcus, I'm glad you're safe." "Are you?" Marcus closed the door behind him. "Because Agent Mitchell seemed pretty determined to make me disappear permanently." David's expression shifted subtly. "Agent Mitchell was trying to protect you. Catherine is dangerous. Is she? Or is she just inconvenient?" "What do you mean?" Marcus moved closer to the desk, hoping the wire was picking up everything clearly. "I mean, maybe Catherine knows something you don't want her to share. Something about your business practices." David's eyes narrowed. "Marcus, I think you've been listening to the wrong people. Maybe, or maybe I've been asking the right questions." Marcus pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I did some research on Blackstone Enterprises. Interesting financial connections, too. Some overseas operations. Many successful companies have international interests." "True, but most of them don't move money through shell companies connected to known human trafficking operations." The silence stretched between them, and Marcus saw something dangerous flicker in David's eyes. "You've been very busy," David said finally. "Desperate times. You know how it is." David walked around the desk, moving with the predatory grace of someone who had made a decision. "Yes, I do know how it is. The question is, what do you plan to do with this information? That depends on what you're willing to do to keep it quiet." David smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And what would that be?" "Let Catherine and Emma disappear. Stop looking for them. Move on with your life." "I'm afraid that's not possible, Marcus. You see, there are certain aspects of my business that require discretion. Catherine knows too much, and she's demonstrated that she can't be trusted to keep quiet." Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline. David was taking the bait. "So you admit there are aspects of your business that require discretion?" "Of course. Any successful enterprise has elements that outsiders wouldn't understand." David moved closer. "The movement of certain commodities across international borders, the coordination of supply chains, the management of human resources." "Human resources? People, Marcus? The movement of people. There's tremendous demand for certain types of workers in various industries around the world. Blackstone Enterprises simply facilitates that movement." Marcus felt sick. David was admitting to human trafficking with the casual tone of someone discussing quarterly earnings. And Detective Morrison? Did she find out about these facilitating activities? David's expression darkened. Detective Morrison was a problem that required a permanent solution. As is her meddling brother, you had her killed. I had a problem solved, just as I'm about to solve another problem. David opened his desk drawer and pulled out a pistol. "You see, Marcus, I've known about your little recording device since you walked in here. Agent Mitchell Helen Morrison has been working for me all along. She's been feeding information to her brother and Catherine, helping them build their little case against me." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Helen's working for you?" "Helen's been on my payroll for 6 months. Did you really think a simple journalist could infiltrate my organization without my knowledge?" David raised the pistol. "She's been telling me everything about the safe house, about Emma's location, about your touching family reunion." Marcus backed toward the door, but David shook his head. "I'm afraid you're not going anywhere, Marcus. Neither is Catherine or Emma. You see, tonight, There's going to be a tragic fire at a certain warehouse. A homeless encampment that got out of control. Very sad. 3 people will die, including a missing child and her mentally ill mother. You're insane, unpractical. Emma was never in any real danger from me. She's worth more alive than dead in certain markets. But Catherine's investigation has made her more trouble than she's worth. And you? Well, you were never part of the plan at all. Marcus realized with growing horror that David was telling him everything because he never intended for Marcus to leave the office alive. The fire will start in approximately 10 minutes. Helen is already on her way to the warehouse with some of my associates. Catherine and Emma trust her, so they won't resist when she tells them they need to evacuate. Of course there won't actually be anywhere to evacuate to. David smiled with genuine pleasure. By morning, all my problems will be solved. The investigation will die with the investigators, and I can get back to business as usual. Marcus lunged for the door, but David was faster. The gun butt caught him across the temple, sending him sprawling to the floor. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, David said. I'll make it quick. As Marcus lay on the carpet, blood trickling from his head wound, he could only think of one thing. He had failed. Emma and Catherine were walking into a trap, and he was going to die without being able to warn them. But as David raised the pistol for the final shot, Marcus heard something that changed everything, the sound of footsteps in the outer office. Mr. Blackstone? Helen Morrison's voice called out. We have a problem. David frowned, keeping the gun trained on Marcus. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the warehouse. Helen appeared in the doorway, and Marcus saw something in her expression that gave him hope. There's been a change of plans, she said. We're not going through with the fire. David's frown deepened. What are you talking about? I'm talking about this, Helen said, and pulled out her own weapon. David Blackstone, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, human trafficking, and about 20 other federal charges. You're bluffing. You work for me. Actually, I work for the FBI. I have for the past year. This entire operation has been designed to get you to incriminate yourself. And congratulations, you just confessed to everything. David stared at her in shock. But you gave me information about Catherine, about the safe house. I gave you exactly what we wanted you to know. Catherine and Emma were never at that warehouse, David. They've been in federal protective custody since yesterday. Marcus struggled to his feet, pressing a hand to his bleeding head. It was all a setup? Helen nodded, keeping her weapon trained on David. The safe house, the family reunion, even your wire, it was all designed to make David think he was in control. We needed him to believe he was winning so he'd reveal his true nature. David slowly lowered his pistol, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. You can't prove anything. Actually, we can. Marcus's wire recorded everything you just sighed. Plus, we have financial records, communications with your overseas associates, and testimony from some of your victims who managed to escape. As Helen placed David in handcuffs, Marcus felt a profound sense of relief wash over him. It was over. Emma was safe, Catherine was safe, and David Blackstone would never hurt anyone again. But there was still one question that needed answering. Where are they? Marcus asked. Where are Catherine and Emma? Helen smiled. They're waiting for you. Downstairs. Your sister's been asking when she gets to see her big brother again. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the lobby of a downtown Chicago office building, adjusting his tie nervously. The building was smaller than Blackstone Tower, less imposing, but it represented something far more important than corporate power. It represented his future. The elevator opened, and Catherine emerged, followed by Emma. Both were dressed nicely, Catherine in a professional suit and Emma in a blue dress that made her look older than her 9 years. Ready for your first day? Catherine asked, beaming with pride. Marcus nodded. still getting used to the idea that he was about to start work as a cybersecurity consultant for a nonprofit organization that helped victims of human trafficking. The job paid well enough to afford a small apartment, and more importantly, it allowed him to use his skills to help people who had experienced the kind of exploitation David Blackstone had facilitated. "I'm nervous," he admitted. "That's normal," Emma said, with the wisdom of someone who had experienced more upheaval in her short life than most adults. "But you'll do great. You're really smart, and you care about people." The three of them rode the elevator to the 7th floor, where Marcus would begin his new life. As they walked down the hallway, Marcus reflected on how much had changed since that rainy night when he found the wallet. David Blackstone was awaiting trial on federal charges that would likely keep him in prison for the rest of his life. His business empire had collapsed, and the FBI was still unraveling the full extent of his criminal network. Dozens of victims had been rescued from trafficking operations around the world. Detective Helen Morrison had emerged from witness protection to testify against David. Her death had been an elaborate ruse designed to protect her while she continued investigating. James Morrison had been officially recognized for his role in the investigation, and Helen Morrison had won a Pulitzer Prize for her undercover journalism. But the biggest change was personal. Marcus had discovered that family wasn't just about blood relations. It was about the people who stood by you when everything fell apart and celebrated with you when life got better. "This is it," Catherine said as they stopped in front of a door marked Cybersecurity Division. Marcus took a deep breath. "Here goes nothing. Here goes everything," Emma corrected with a grin. Marcus opened the door and stepped into his new life, one that included a mother who had never stopped loving him, a sister who looked up to him, and work that gave his skills meaning beyond mere survival. That evening, the three of them had dinner at a small restaurant near Marcus's new apartment. Emma chattered excitedly about starting public school in the fall, while Catherine talked about her job at a victims advocacy organization. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said to Catherine as they were finishing their meal. "Of course. When you first approached me in that alley, did you know how this would all turn out?" Catherine smiled. "No. I knew it was dangerous, and I knew there was a good chance we'd all end up dead or worse. But I also knew that Emma deserved to grow up free, and that you deserved to know you had a family. And if I had just turned you into the police that first night, then we would have found another way. That's what family does, we find a way." Emma looked up from her dessert. "Are we going to be okay now? I mean, really okay?" Marcus reached across the table and took her small hand in his. "We're going to be better than okay. We're going to be happy. Promise?" "I promise." As they walked home through the Chicago streets, Marcus thought about all the nights he had spent alone, cold and hungry, wondering if his life would ever mean anything again. He had found purpose in the most unlikely way through a lost wallet and a little girl's photograph. The city looked different now. The same buildings, the same streets, but everything had changed because Marcus was no longer walking through them alone. He had a family, a job, and hope for the future. 6 months later, Marcus stood in a courtroom watching David Blackstone receive a life sentence without possibility of parole. The judge's words echoed through the chamber. "The exploitation of vulnerable people for profit represents one of the most heinous crimes our society faces. This sentence reflects not only the severity of your actions, but also our commitment to justice for your victims." Catherine squeezed Marcus's hand as they watched David being led away in shackles. "It's over," she whispered. "No," Marcus replied, thinking of Emma waiting at home with her homework and her stuffed elephant, of the apartment where they would have dinner together that night, of the future stretching ahead of them full of possibilities. "It's just beginning." Emma had been right that first day in her room at the safe house. Marcus had been lost, but he had found his way back to his family. More than that, he had found his way back to himself. The poor young man who had returned a lost wallet had discovered Something worth more than money. More valuable than any treasure. He had found his place in the world, and it was right where he belonged with the people who loved him. As they left the courthouse and walked into the bright Chicago afternoon, Marcus Chen felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the absolute certainty that tomorrow would be better than today, and that he would never be alone again. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the small house Marcus had bought in a quiet Chicago suburb. In the kitchen, Emma sat at the breakfast table, now 10 years old and more confident than ever. Her school books spread out as she worked on a science project about family trees. "Marcus, look at this," she called out, holding up her assignment. "I wrote about how families aren't just the people you're born with. They're the people who choose to love you no matter what." Marcus smiled as he poured coffee for Catherine, who was getting ready for her job as director of the city's new anti-trafficking task force. The three of them had built something beautiful from the ashes of their separate tragedies. "That's perfect." He said, ruffling her dark hair. "What did you write about me?" "I wrote that you're the best big brother in the world because you risked everything to save me, even though you didn't know I was your sister yet." Catherine wiped away a tear. "And what did you write about me?" "That you're the bravest mom ever, because you never gave up fighting for your children." As Marcus drove Emma to school that morning, she asked the question that had become their daily ritual. "Are you happy, Marcus?" He looked at her in the rearview mirror, this remarkable little girl who had taught him that family was worth any sacrifice, and smiled. "I'm the happiest I've ever been." That evening, as they sat together on their front porch watching the sunset, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. One lost wallet had changed everything, not just for him, but for dozens of trafficking victims who had been rescued, for Catherine who had her children back, and for Emma who could finally live without fear. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of courage, family, and redemption. Did this story give you chills? Which twist shocked you the most? Drop a comment below and let us know your favorite moment from Marcus's amazing transformation from a homeless man to a hero who saved his family. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We create these heart-pounding, emotional stories every week, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. If this story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who believes in the power of doing the right thing, even when life gets tough. What story should we tell next? Comment below with your ideas. Maybe a story about second chances, hidden treasures, or mysterious inheritances. Your suggestions help us create the content you love most. See you in the next incredible tale.